Hi, this is Charlie Edwards. Please subscribe to Sporting Icon for the latest boxing news.
Now, as far as I'm concerned, boxing has always gone hand in hand with corruption, backstabbingness, deceitfulness, two-facedness, selfishness, and all these kind of things. They've always seemed to have gone hand in hand. And that's unfortunate, very, very unfortunate. And for my sins, and I know it's wrong to do so, I've always never really looked into boxing management companies or anything, because I've kind of put boxing managers into the same dirty bucket for a long time. And I know it's not the right thing to do, but it's just how it is. And you'll understand that why I said that as this video goes along, because I will be giving you guys a lot of stories that fighters have told me one-on-one, some of my own personal experiences as well of some people trying to shut me out of boxing and things like that. So I'm going to be giving you guys a lot of things that I don't usually talk about in this video. So buckle up for that one. Now, my question to you guys is MTK Global the breath of fresh air and maybe the little spark of light that boxing has been lacking for a long, long time? And my answer is yes, and we are going to get to that point. Again, as a side note, I have no affiliation with MTK. I don't know anybody at MTK. I've never spoken to anybody at MTK. And I'm not after anything from MTK either. But all this is just my opinion. It's me being me as always throughout all my videos. Everything is always just my opinion and unscripted as well. So this is why I'm probably going to find myself going around the houses because I don't quite know how I'm going to put together all the pieces. I have no kind of model to get to it. So just bear with me. Now, my memory goes back to, in fact, I couldn't even tell you what year it is, but as a very, very small kid, the very first fight that I ever seen, many of you guys will know this already if you watched my Barry Hearn interview, where I actually mentioned this to him, which was my dad hated him. He really did. For me, I always liked Barry Hearn. Why? Because my dad hated him. Me and my dad never got on. But as a very, very small kid, the very first fight that I ever watched was Barry McGuigan versus Jim McDonnell. And not that I knew who these guys were, not at all. I just remember my dad saying to my dad, saying to my mum that if Barry McGuigan loses this fight, he's going to have to retire. So this was something my dad did not want. My dad, just like me, born up in the Northeast. Difference is he was born and raised here in the Northeast. I was born here, spent the first few years of my life in the Northeast, but ultimately raised down south. Ultimately, I forced my accent to fit in with the Southerners because way back then, whatever year that was it 89, 1990, wherever it was, kids and that in school thought I was Scottish, is what it is. So I had to adopt my accent to fit with a lot of those guys there, much to the dismay of my dad. Now, getting back to the point, my dad didn't like Southerners. He really, really didn't. In fact, I haven't spoken to my dad in many, many years, but he always hated Southerners. They had this mentality of, obviously him growing up in the 60s, 70s and that, always had this thing of looking at Southerners as you guys have been given all the opportunity, you guys got all the jobs and everything. So if people from the Northeast in sport were on, obviously he'd always support them. But if it wasn't somebody from the Northeast, then he'd go to Ireland. I don't quite know why, but he would go to Ireland. And Barry McGuigan was one of his favourite fighters, going up against Jim McDonnell. Now, how this fight played out, again, I don't have too much memory of it. I remember my dad's reaction. I said, my dad never spent any kind of time with me. But I remember this particular moment because when the fight ended very, very early on, if I remember rightly, was because my dad booted the coffee table that hard, the thing flipped. And my sandwich, whatever it was, like a jam sandwich or whatever it was, and my drink flew out onto the living room floor. And my dad was up there in front of the TV shouting at the referee and Barry Hearn. And some of the profanities that my dad was coming out with were very, very new to me at the time, of course. And he was going at Barry Hearn on the TV saying it's his fault, he's paid off the referee, he's a corrupt mother F and blah, blah, blah. He was doing all this kind of thing. So from that moment, boxing, corruption has always gone hand in hand, which is what I said to Barry Hearn, that my dad hated him because of that reason, which is one of the reasons why I like Barry Hearn, to be anti my dad, right? Now, I don't believe that Barry Hearn did anything wrong, but even so, from that moment on, we've always heard stories like Mike Tyson, Don King, and plenty of other things going along the way. So boxing and corruption has always been going hand in hand, and it's unfortunate that's just how it's been. So I've always asked the question, who out there is looking after the fighter's interest? Now, I started my boxing channel just over 2 years ago, and since that moment, plenty of fighters have approached me. I've been speaking to many fighters behind the scenes, if you like, where we speak on the phone or text message or whatever it may be. And some of the stories that these guys tell me are very, very disturbing. Even now, 2019, these things shouldn't be happening, but they are. Which is why I said in the beginning, MTK could be the answer to this one. Listen, I'm not trying to big them up. If I ever hear anything negative about MTK, I will say so. It's just how I am. But even now, these fighters are telling me these stories. So as I said, when I started this channel, I didn't know not one person involved in boxing, as in personally. I didn't even know a gym sweeper or somebody who carried a spit bucket. Never knew anybody. But after a few months, I got speaking with Dillian White, luckily for me. He come onto the channel. From then, things motored on. Obviously, other fighters then seen that interview, would approach me, blah, blah, and things took off. So, which is why I'm always grateful to Dillian White. Now, some of the fighters that approach me, many of them haven't featured on my channel, which again, let's get to that point. The reason that some of these guys haven't featured on my channel is because fighters, actually listen up, any fighters out there right now, you may have a manager, a promoter, an agent, whatever you may have. Remember, you are still the boss. And to be honest with you, I do get kind of tired of telling fighters this. You are still the boss. You employ them. You could fire them if you really want to, if you're unhappy. So that's one of the reasons why some of them haven't featured on my channel, is because these guys have approached me and obviously we've been speaking. They said, listen, you know, I want to come on your channel. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's arrange a time, a date, blah, blah, blah. And they say, yeah, that's cool. Can you get hold of my management and ask them if I can come on? Which is what I'm saying. You are the boss. Why do I have to ask them for you? First of all, you do what you got to do. You are in charge of your career. Why do you need a manager's permission? A manager who's getting 25%, let's be honest, going by some of the stories that they've been telling me, for doing bugger all. 25% for doing a bit of liaising between somebody putting on the show, a promoter. We want your fighter to come on our show and this is how much you're going to get paid and you're going to have to sell this amount of tickets or whatever it's going to be. They just then relay that message to the fighter. The fighter says yes or no. They then go back to the promoter and say, yeah, okay, we're going to take the fight. And they get 25% for this one. But yet a manager is there to guide your career, especially in the early part when you're a prospect, when your manager should be out there trying to get rid of tickets for you. But nowadays, you've got too many managers out there trying to be up on the stage, trying to be celebrities and not looking after their fighters' careers, not guarding them correctly. They're just trying to make a quick buck. They're trying to turn their fighters into journeymen before they even come out of the prospect stage yet. Why? Because being a journeyman gets regular income. These guys fight a lot. They get paid to lose. Or to be a journeyman, you've got to be very skillful and very durable and have a hell of a lot of heart as well. Why? Because some journeymen, you could fight virtually every weekend or every couple of weekends and get paid a hell of a lot more than some professional fighters who are actually trying to achieve something like a Southern Area title, British, a Commonwealth, European, ultimately world champion. But journeymen get paid more because they're fighting more regularly. And journeymen don't have to go to the gym and that all the time. They don't have to sell tickets so much, all that kind of thing. But a prospect has to do a whole lot of stuff, which is why they need a manager to take a burden of that. But a lot of managers don't. So they get thrown to the wolves, and sometimes some of these fighters get put into fights that they have no business being in the ring with some of these guys. Why? Because the manager has no interest in their career. But a manager should have an interest in their career. A manager signs a fighter, you should be trying to guide your fighter. Put them in the right fights. Not just think, okay, how much am I going to get paid? Because it's not about you. There's too many wannabe celebrities out there. It's not about you, it's about the fighter and your career and their career. Yes, of course, you want to make a return of whatever investment you may or may not have put into them. But ultimately, just give them a fighting chance. You know, put them in the ring with people that they should be fighting, not people that they have no business being in the ring with. And this is the point, that a lot of fighters come to me and they tell me about these stories. You'll be surprised to know that actually a few fighters have asked me to manage them. Listen, I would love to do that kind of thing, but I'm a realist. I don't have the kind of experience or the knowledge that these guys need. So I can't do them any kind of justice. So I have to do the right thing, which is turn them down. And for some fighters, I have actually set them up with some management companies. For example, like Ira Sports Management. A couple of fighters that I know I arranged for these guys to be set up with them. And as a consequence, they've been getting sponsorships and all this kind of thing. So I'll always help where I can. But as I said, a fighter, you need to remember, you are the boss, not your manager. You don't have to do what the manager tells you what to do. If you're unhappy, then move on. But MTK Global are doing the things that I really, really want to see. They really are, because they're guiding their fighters' careers, which is absolutely brilliant. Now, some of the things that I've heard of, which is, like I said, like these fighters just getting thrown under the bus. They're sitting on the sidelines, they're not getting fights, or all this kind of thing, because the managers just don't care, because they're disappointed with them, because they're not going to be a journeyman for them. Now, as I said earlier, I was born here in the Northeast. I currently live here, but I spent a fair bit of time away. Now, living down south, what you don't hear about is Northeast boxing. You just don't hear about it. You don't hear about Yorkshire boxing either. You just don't hear about them. So, of course, when I moved up here to Newcastle, which is right before I started my channel, obviously I'll look about and I'll see who are the boxing platforms, who are the managers, who are the promoters, where is it they put on shows, what fighters are there? That's what I was doing. So I started my channel very, very quickly. As I said, and a lot of it is thanks down to Dillian White, that it sounds arrogant and I really hate saying it, but when it comes to Northeast, there isn't a boxing platform, whether it be YouTube, radio, TV, anything, any kind of platform that even comes close to me. Not even close. And I've only been doing this 2 years. Some of these guys have been doing it for several years. I have a bigger megaphone than what many of these boxing promoters do. Some of these promoters are struggling to sell shows, small hall shows. But whereas I could help them, they don't want my help. Why? Because, I don't know, maybe they see me as a plastic Geordie, I don't know. Maybe they don't like my opinions because I may have gone in on one of their favourite fighters or one of their friends or something like that at some point. Why? Because I dared to have an opinion. You'll be surprised how many people don't like people to have opinions. How many people seem to think that I should be professional, even though I'm not paid to be professional. I'm not allowed an opinion. How dare you have an opinion? Other YouTubers are out there trying to get in the ears of boxing promoters and managers. Oh, Sporting Icons is, Sporting Icons, he's on the Matchroom payroll, and Sporting Icons is complete garbage. I'm not on the Matchroom payroll, never have been, don't want to be. But these people will say that. Why? Because I have a different opinion to what they do. So therefore, if I have a different opinion, therefore I must be on the payroll of the people that they don't like. So they are anti-Sky, anti-Matchroom. So therefore, I must be on the payroll. This is how these people do, and they speak to the ears. And these boxing promoters and whatever refuse to allow me to speak to some of their fighters. It's not the fighters' fault. The fighters are even unaware of it. But they are harming their fighter because they are setting up their fighters to be speaking to, say, a Northeast channel who's probably going to get them 50 views for their one interview. Whereas me, I get anywhere from 1.5 to 2 million views per month. You know, you don't have to be a mathematical wizard to work out which would be better for your client. But because I have a personal issue. So this is like my own little version of some backstabbing that's going on in boxing. And I'm just a YouTuber. Imagine what some of these guys are going through who are actually involved in boxing. So where does MTK come into it? Right, so MTK, these guys guide careers. These guys have, 100, 150 fighters on their books. Now, not all of them feature on their shows. As you guys know, these guys put on shows through IFL, and I believe they have something to do with ESPN now as well, which is fantastic. These guys are making waves. I very first heard of MTK, 2.5 years ago or something. You guys remember when Tyson Fury, he was going to make a comeback, then he wasn't, then he was, then he wasn't. And he went over to Marbella at the gym, at the MTK gym in Marbella. And with Billy Joe Saunders, he was obviously very out of shape, and he decided that he was going to actually try and get fit. It didn't last too well, was it? A few days. And he went back on the plane and left it alone for a few more months. But this was like the very first time that I heard of MTK. And since that moment, we're hearing it all the time. Fighters give them shout-outs. I mean, when have you ever heard a fighter give a management company a shout-out? This would show you in itself that these guys are doing something right. Well, it must do, mustn't it? But in addition to that, these guys, I'm probably going to get this wrong, and I don't mean to, but I see these guys as they have some kind of department where it's legal, where I would see it as these are some kind of union as well for boxers. Now, unions are the bane of my existence. My background for many, many years was management, project management for, was it the third largest company in the world? And across the UK and Europe, I always had to argue with unions over their employees. Their employees would mess up at work. It's me to discipline them. They will bring in their union, and then we end up arguing. And these guys, listen, I give credit where credit is due. These guys are brilliant. These guys know the law back to front. They know how to bend it, slip through the net, and all this kind of thing. So 9 times out of 10, even though you know their employer, your employer of the company should be fired for some of the things that they've done, their union guy also knows it, but they're not going to allow that. They're going to twist it and do everything that they can to win the case. So in boxing, this has been needed. Been very, very needed. And for a long time, there's too many fighters getting thrown under the bus. They're not getting paid. They're sat on the sidelines and what have you. And MTK Global come along and are almost acting like a union. I'm not saying that they are a union. I'm saying that they can act like it, as in they will represent their fighters legally. So in addition to them guiding the careers and putting a lot of time and effort into prospects, and they will help them with legal issues and things like that, but they will also help them with the fact that they have their own shows in that as well with IFL TV, as I said, where many of the fighters that they represent, listen, they could be signed to promotional companies such as Matchroom or Queensberry or whoever, but if Eddie Hearn Matchroom, if Frank Warren Queensberry are not putting them on shows and not getting them fights, MTK will bring in their guys to fight on their shows. Listen, they may not get paid a lot of money, I have no idea, but the fact is they're still getting paid something, because a boxer's livelihood is fighting. You get paid when you fight. If you're sat on the sidelines waiting for a fight because these big promotional companies are not giving you fights, then you're not paying your bills. MTK will give them shows. Like Martin Murray, for example. You've got like Jazza Dickens. You've got Rocky Fielding. The list goes on and on. These guys who are signed to bigger promotional companies, you will see them fight on MTK shows. Why? To keep them active, to keep money in their pocket. And activity is essential for these guys. What you don't need is ring rust. You don't need it. So these guys are out there looking for the best interest of their clients. In addition to that, they have gyms around the world. One of them here in Newcastle. And when I said that, I'm banned from talking to some kind of fighters or whatever, and which obviously means I'm banned for some gyms, the MTK Newcastle one is not one of them. In fact, I've never spoken to MTK. So they have a gym here in Newcastle. They have them in Liverpool, Manchester, I think Belfast. They have them in Brazil, Dubai, I think as well, Johannesburg, something like that. They have a few gyms around the world. They have a foundation section as well, where they do charities, they do speaking tours and inspirational tours, all these kind of things. These guys have something of everything. So do not be surprised if these guys end up taking over boxing at a minimum here in the UK. And rightfully so, because word of mouth travels much, much further than anything else. So their clients will obviously speak to other boxers and talk to them about what it is that MTK Global do for them and all these kind of things that I've just told you, plus many more that I'm unaware of. Obviously, these guys then want to join up with MTK. Do not be surprised if MTK increase their roster a hell of a lot over the next few years and end up taking over boxing. Don't be surprised if MTK end up putting on their shows on Sky Sports or BT Sport or something like that. Because if you even look at some of the shows that they're putting on via live streaming through IFL, some of their shows are actually better than the bigger ones. So it makes you wonder how much longer until these guys are going to take over, and good luck to them. Really good luck to them. As I said, I have no affiliation with MTK. I don't know anybody there either. But, well, I say I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody personally to speak to. But when I went onto their website, because I was curious as to who they are, hence this video, I was surprised how many people actually work in important roles in MTK who are even still now fighters, former promoters, former managers, and things like that. So when you look at the whole thing, these guys are taking over boxing. I'm presuming, hence the reason, MTK Global. Listen, that's my thoughts on it all. For me, I think that these guys are exactly what's needed. As I said before, my experience with unions, as much as they are the bane of my existence, especially with the transport departments and that, These guys know what it is that they're doing. So I'm presuming, it's just an assumption, that MTK have something to do with, are they unionizing boxers? If they are, great. Great, because these guys need it. These guys need something to aim for. They need to keep active. Then I don't know whether these guys do some kind of pension scheme and that. I have no idea. But ultimately, it appears that these guys are doing the right things. They have huge names on their roster as well. Tyson Fury, Billy Joe Saunders, Martin Murray, Rocky Fielding, Carl Frampton, and Jazza Dickens, and so on and so on and so on. And a lot of prospects that you haven't heard of. But if you keep watching the shows, you will. So anyway, big up to MTK Global. In my opinion, these guys have come along at the right time. Or eventually, I should say. And I wish that these other companies... Listen, I'm sure that there are other management companies out there who also do a lot of this kind of thing that go under the radar. It's just that MTK now have the megaphone where they can actually broadcast their name. So anyway, for any kind of management company who do anything like this, if you guys look after your fighters and guide their careers correctly, then you have a huge vote from me. You really do, because prospects are very, very important to me. Too many fighters end up giving up on their career because they're not getting the support that they need. It is what it is, right? Anyway, you drop your thoughts below about it. Click the thumbs up. Apologies for rambling on. And subscribe. Catch you all on the next one.